Good afternoon and welcome to the Finance and Capital Management Committee meeting. We will start with recognizing that my co-chair, Member Harrison, is present, as well as myself as the chair of the Finance and Capital Management Committee meeting. We will start with the previous meeting summary. As we go forward, the summary will be referred to as the minutes. Member Harrison, can I have a motion, please, to accept the minutes?
I make a motion that we accept the previous minutes summary.
Okay, so I would second that, and so we will approve the minutes of the last meeting of the Finance and Capital Management Committee meeting. I'm Barbara Sykes, the chair of the Finance and Capital Management meeting, and we're going to begin today with a quick conversation about issue 27. So if Dr. Chapman can come up, and you can just sit here, Dr. Chapman, while you continue to figure that out.
Thank you, Chair Member Sykes. I wanted to share the positive results of our Issue 27 campaign. Akron voters approved the levy with 57.72% of the vote in favor of the operating levy and the bond issue to build a new North High School. And this represented 36,886 of the 63,903 voters who voted on this issue. And I wanted to give just a few data points that resonated with me about our campaign. They are also celebrations. Out of the 10 city wards across Akron, 5 of them voted with 100% of their precincts in favor of issue 27. We had APS board member engagement in this campaign, and that we celebrate. There were a total of 75 volunteers, including APS staff and community members. We had broad-based citizen committee membership across many organizations and entities in the Akron area. There was grassroots and community support, both financially and as volunteers for this campaign. Community presence was made by all of us participating as coordinators of our efforts at many community events. Powerful endorsements, including the Akron Beacon Journal, all of our hospitals, major employers, among many. Strong media and social media support of the campaign. We had consultant support with Triumph Communications out of Columbus, and fundraising in place to support the campaign needs. Last but not least, I want to publicly thank Member Sykes for volunteering her experience, expertise, wisdom, and connections throughout this campaign. And no, she does not know that I was going to thank her, but she was there every step along the way. So thank you for answering my calls at all times of the day, early morning, evenings, late at night, for guiding me and Adam through some difficult decisions, keeping us motivated and focused. So we want to thank you for everything. But most importantly, we want to thank our community as well for voting in favor of our district and for the students and families of the North Hill community.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. And let me just add to that, it was my pleasure and delight to have the opportunity to work with you and with Adam. And so we made it through this together. And I can't think of a better levy to work on than for our children here in the Akron public school system. And thank all of the staff. And we may note that not only current staff, but past board members participated in this levy. And then I would say when the days got long and difficult and early morning came, we was always happy to see our senator stand there with us too and to pass our campaign. So I want to publicly thank him for doing that. I also had the role of treasurer, and I just would like to report that during the last 12 years, we took a look at the last campaign. I believe $344,000 was raised, and we passed the levy, and we had $500 left. During this levy, we raised $108,380, and we have $22,507.12 to start off with. But who's counting? $22,507.12 to start our next levy with 58% of the points. So 58% of the vote voting for the levy. So we're very pleased with what we were able to accomplish with the help of all of you, everyone, the community that's listening, as well as those of you that's in the room. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And on behalf of our children in particular, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Chapman. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to accept the report from Dr. Chapman on Levy 27. Our superintendent just came in. Did you want to add anything, Mr. Superintendent, to that? Just Levy 27?
Thank you, Member Sykes. Chair lady, sorry. I want to just say thank you to our community, to our parents. Yeah, it just means so much that they said yes, that they trust us enough to let us handle the business of the district, and so I appreciate that. To you, Mrs. Sykes, and standing out there days in the weather, just supporting us and supporting the community. To Dr. Chapman and to Mr. Motter,
Adam,
for just, and our staff, everyone, for just everything that they did to make this a success. Because when people said no, I remember you standing up in the board meeting and saying yes, and the board saying yes, and we went forward. And so for that, I know I'm eternally grateful on behalf of our scholars and our staff for the work that was put in for that.
Thank you. All righty, so we're going to move to the next item on the agenda, and that is the 5-year forecast. And so, Dr. Thompson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson Sykes, and Co-Chair Reverend Harrison, Superintendent Robinson, Mrs. Carter, who is our Chief of Staff, are here, and of course we just saw Carla Chapman, our Executive Director of Equity across our district. So again, of course, the levy passage makes all of our jobs so much easier. Doesn't do all of our work by any stretch, but it makes it very possible to continue to thrive as a school district. So I think there's been enough thank yous, but the finance department is really relieved that the levy passed. So we're going to look at just a couple of 5-year forecasts, but there are some consistencies that are important to keep in mind as we look at these. So obviously our levy passed. Because it passed in November, it means we receive a half collections this January. So we get about half the money this year. Full collections begin next year. We had great news that came in actually the day after the levy. We received notice from the Ohio Tax Commission that we, in fact, will receive roughly about $3 million a year. That's what we have forecasted in new public utility values. So essentially what happened is First Energy made investments into the infrastructure here in Northeast Ohio. As a result of that, their values increased, and so did our tax receipts from the public utility. It's pretty rare. It usually goes down, not up. So it was a nice change of pace, and it certainly has helped us continue to improve our 5-year forecast. This is an important one because this accounts for about 20% of our total budget, which is healthcare. Pretty close, real close. So we monitor those increases each year. Those are inflationary increases. That's not a percentage that applies to, doesn't have anything to do with staff. It has to do with what the district is charged, our premiums increasing as a district, that the district pays. So at 7.5%, that's what we're forecasting over the life of this contract. And we believe that, that's about 2% below the state average. So that's a good thing. And a big piece of that is our Everside, our agreement with Everside, and finding ways to, Everside is a clinic that provides service to our staff, and then we receive a significant discount for that. So that's really, and they provide some great services. So it's a really strong and works for both parties. And so I can tell you that we're very pleased with our partnership with Everside. It is changing to Marathon soon, but for now it's still Everside. Some of our goals that we want to make sure we hit is being in the black, meaning positive cash reserves throughout the life of this forecast. So that doesn't mean that we won't deficit spend, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but it means that we will not show a deficit. Significant difference between deficit spending and an actual deficit. So our goal is to be positive, black, across all 5 years of our 5-year forecast, and that is, we'd be one of the few districts in the state that show that on a 5-year forecast. Maintain at least 2 months of cash reserves at all times for as long as we possibly can in the life of this forecast. That is written in district policy, to maintain 2 months cash reserves. And we want to continue being fiscally responsible and being transparent to the board and to the community, to our staff, to all of our stakeholders. So understanding the impacts of reductions, and I think this is a term that I think might be the most important term to actualize or sink in for folks to help understand when we start talking about reductions. So there are mainly two kinds of reductions: compounding reductions. And so let me talk a little bit about a compounding reduction. So let's say we were to eliminate, typically it's positions, but it doesn't have to be a position. It could be anything that's a reoccurring cost and is forecasted over the life of the 5-year forecast. It could be duplicitous software. It could be a variety of things, but it has to be a cost that happens. So in this particular example, let's say that we're going to eliminate the treasurer, and the treasurer makes $100,000. So that would become, it's $100,000 every year. It's not an additional cut every single year. But that reduction would become, in 2026, we save another $100,000 there, plus the $100,000 from 25, another $100,000 in 27, plus 25, 26, so forth, all the way through the forecast. So that one reduction becomes a savings on the back end of the 5-year forecast for $500,000. So what you want to hit is compounding reductions. Compounding reductions pay dividend 5 times versus a one-time reduction. So same example, $100,000. This would typically, not always, but typically be a capital improvement project. It's where you'll find this often. So it's just something that needs repaired, or something you were going to spend dollars on, but only spend it one time and then it's over. So if you make that reduction, while that would certainly help you in fiscal year 25, But as soon as that comes back around to being addressed, whatever that was cut, unless you can kick it all the way through the entire 5-year forecast, then you actually don't even see the reduction. But in this particular example, we're assuming you can kick it all the way across, and that would be a $100,000 savings at the end on a 5-year forecast. And that is the difference between compounding and a one-time reduction. So we really want to focus, on reductions that are compounding. So what we're taking a look at right now is our 5-year forecast. There are no reductions on this 5-year forecast. It's just as it sits with no changes. And it assumes all those base assumptions with the levy passed and those new public utility values. And as you can see on this is your bottom line on that yellow. Bring your attention to that yellow line. It's showing us with cash reserves of $83,072,000 in fiscal year 27. We're at 49. Fiscal year 28, we're at 18. And fiscal year 29, we show a $30 million deficit. The line above shows your revenue and surplus or deficit, and you can see how that reads. So I think a question that I just want to hit one more time is, why do districts go into deficit spending? Why does that happen?
Actually, no, that's not a question. So if we could move on.
Okay. The 5-year forecast recommended reduction. So this is it altered to include all those base assumptions, the public utility values, and the new reductions from district administration and delays in capital projects. So you can see that's a shift. These cuts are roughly $4.5 million over the life of the 5-year forecast, and that's at $26 million deficit in 29. But again, black numbers, positive numbers from 25 through 28. And again, same area. Mm-hmm. So just to show one example of where administratively we're striving to be, and that is to be black across all, or positive numbers across all. So what does that take? Again, this assumption, this 5-year forecast assumes that all the levy has passed, utilities, new reductions, which were $4.5 million that I showed on the previous slide, and then additional compounding cuts, reductions, starting in fiscal year 26. So again, it's only a round of cuts, reductions once, and as long as it's compounding and you hold those, each year it'll appear 10 million more, 10 million more, 10 million more, and you go from that $26 million hole to a $16 million cash reserves. So what will appear before the board for their approval on the 25th, this is required by the Ohio Department of Education, Workforce, and Ohio Revised Code to submit 2 forecasts a year. One is obviously in November, one is in May. So the November forecast, this is the forecast that shows everything that's solidly put together right now. But I believe the plan is that, well, I know the plan is that we're going to go back as an administrative team, and I'll show you a timeline of what we're looking at in just a moment as to when you might see changes. But the very positive thing about this forecast, where it puts us, we're safe with ODEW, We're not anywhere in the threat of commissions or any of those things. We're in positive shape for the first 4 years, but we know that our goal is to hit that $10 million mark. Again, this includes all base assumptions, the public utilities, the $4.5 million in reductions, and that's what we're looking at on this slide, and we hope to come back with the additional reductions. So what we're looking at is, obviously, we're here today, and we are reviewing that 5-year forecast. On the 25th, we'll present the 5-year forecast. It is currently my intention to present the one that you just saw.
Dr. Thompson,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
it is your intentions to present version 2 that we just saw
Yes, ma'am.
with the deficit in 2029,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
5-year projection?
Yes, ma'am.
And you want to talk, why are we presenting a projection with a deficit in the 5th year? We don't have the reductions?
We have currently $4.5 million in reductions, which is baked into this. Further reductions are being worked on, but they're not ready to present at this time.
Superintendent, did you want to add to this?
Yes, ma'am. So, thank you. So, what we were able to do for today in preparation for the 25th is the 4.5. However, we're still going to be doing continuous review of things, looking at attrition, so that between now and May, when school ends, we will have done further reductions, looking at things that we can freely reduce, where we can freely reduce, but also looking at attrition. So, and then we are also in preparation for 25-26 school year, looking at doing some continued restructuring and reductions there as well. I think we're going to be way above $10 million over the life of this 5-year forecast. But in preparation for tonight, this is what we were able to do. But we're going to continue to be looking at areas that we can, before the school year ends, where we can make further reductions. So this is not the end of this process, and we're also, again, looking at the reductions for 25-26, which would be added to this forecast. So that may even help us even more in 2029, so that we're able to hopefully be in the red, in the black there as well.
Okay, so so we understand the purpose of 5-year forecasting, so that we're telling the state this is the condition of our district and this is where we see ourselves in 5 years.
It is a projection.
It is a projection, it's a forecast. However, it is also an understanding that when the state sees this and we are projecting a deficit, that then that's going to trigger.
It's not going to trigger anything. Whoops, I'm sorry, went too far back. It's not going to trigger anything yet. The first trigger happens if your 3rd year is red, is the first trigger. Mm-hmm. And currently our 4th year is red. So that wouldn't trigger anything for 1 year if it just stayed exactly as it is.
And this is without any additional spending.
That's correct.
This is exactly the way that we see things. We're not adding anything. We're not forecasting any unforeseen expenses. This is just, everything is just going to go absolutely perfectly. And this is what we're projecting. All right, so are we also projecting that this is on track for us to go back in 4 years to ask for another levy?
As it stands currently?
Yes.
No.
What is that projection for the next levy?
If this forecast did not change, we would have to be on the ballot in '27.
In 3 years.
3 years.
Right. And this, again, we'll ask, is what you will be presenting to the board to approve on the 25th, because it needs to be to the state on November 30th.
That's correct.
Any questions from committee members? Member Molinar?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, what?
he did- okay, go ahead, yep.
have a question, okay.
So as we look at this forecast and we talk about everything being perfect, the hiring, attrition, this forecast is forecasted on every position that we have budgeted for right now.
Correct. It's not budgeting for any additional personnel.
Member Molinar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this, I see, is slide 12. The version that's on slide 11, the version 3, so this version, where we are in the black the whole time, since I'm hearing that this is not the one that's going to be presented, or not planned to be the one to be presented to the board on Monday, can I hear perhaps what would need to be done, and I'm sorry if I already missed this, in order for a projection like this, where we are in the black for all 5 years, where we're not seeking a levy in 3 years, what would need to be done in order for that type of projection to be available?
That bottom bullet point, the additional compounding reductions starting in fiscal year 26 of $10 million each year. Again, when I say each year, because it's compounding, it's only one set of cuts, not cuts every single year, but it's one set of cuts that are held.
I have another question.
Yes, Member Harrison.
We, at the October 22nd meeting, we talked about $10 to $12 million in cuts. That was the starting point. That was where we were at October 22nd. So I'll first ask why we did not make those numbers. But my statement to that would be, I'm not comfortable moving forward if we had that much time to make the numbers. A 5-year forecast not giving us any leeway for any unforeseen seems rather difficult for me.
Understand?
That was a question for the 10 million, the 10 to
I'll defer to the
12 million.
superintendent for that response.
Yeah, so given the time of where we are right now, that based on what we were able to reduce, there was absolutely not enough time for us to be able to do that amount. And it's not so much the time, but we didn't have the actual tangible things that we could actually come up to $10 million. So it's really not so much the time, because we've scoured it. And that's why I keep reiterating that between now, even though this is being presented, but between now and May, there will be additional reductions and things, even through attrition, that we will be able to add to this 4.5. That would get us to 10 million. But we're also looking at 25-26 school year. That's why I'm saying I feel very confident that we're going to be well above $10 million for the life of this 5-year forecast that I think would be able to help us in year 2029.
Well, Mr. Superintendent, thank you for that. However, right now we are faced with sending our projections to the state by November 30th. Mm-hmm. And so we are faced with the fact that we do need to come up with some additional reductions.
Yes, ma'am.
And we need to do that before March.
Yes.
Because we are asked to submit that by November 30th.
Right. So you submitted in May and in November. However, we can, let's say, for example, in December, we went back looking at this stuff, as we will be doing, and we found $8 more million worth of things. We can resubmit our 5-year forecast to the state to do an amendment and resubmit it in January if we wanted to. There are only 2 times a year when you're mandated to submit it, and it's in May and November. But we could submit it every month. As we find things, we can continue to keep updating our forecast, bring it back to the board, and then resubmit it, just so we can see those calculations even before May. And so March, I think, is a reasonable time for us to have even looked at the remainder of this year, although we do know that things happen people resign in April and May as well. Mm-hmm. But this will give us a little more time to look at attrition and even planning into 25-26. We've kind of already looked at 25-26, and we've already found about $2 million worth of things that we would be putting on the table and added to the 4.5. So it's over the life of this 5-year forecast that we would do 10 million, but I think we're going to do far more than that. And actually, that's the goal, because we want to be able to be black in 2029.
So the way that, just for the members of the board, the way that this is presented today is not something that I can support. We really do need to find some more reductions before we submit this to the state on November 30th. So that is going to be my recommendation to this from this committee, unless you have some objections, Ms. Board Member Harrison. And so what we would need to do is, between now and the board meeting, we have Monday on the 25th, we need to work to come up with some more reductions. So if, in fact, we're saying that additional compounding reductions of 10 million needs to start in 2026, then that's what we need to do, because we just asked the public, and they just agreed to support this levy. And so to go back to the public to say, we can't come up, we need every single thing, we can't come up with a thing except for you paying more, when we as a school district have not shown that we are doing everything that we can do to make sure that we are making the reductions where we can make reductions. Nobody said it's going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But we need to do that in order, one, to show that we are a responsible district and we understand what the requirements of the state of Ohio are. And it doesn't matter about which side of the aisle you're on, D or R. Nobody wants to see a school run in a deficit over the 5-year projection. And it's not acceptable. And we need to say to the community, we are not coming to you to ask you to pay, but yet we can't manage to come up with, but what was it, 4.5 reductions? 4.5 reductions out of a budget that's over $600 million. I'm not going to do that. So if this is all you have to offer, then it would be up to Mr. Harrison, Dr. Molinar, and other board members to come up with some reductions.
Yes,
And that's why I see we are. If Mr. Superintendent, you can't come up with any more reductions, you and your administration cannot, then it will be up to us to do it.
Mrs. Sykes, Chairman Sykes, so just a question of clarification when we go back to start this work. You're not saying that, if I'm correct, what I'm hearing is you're not saying that these cuts are this year, but we need to concretely show what those 10 million in compounding cuts
Absolutely.
is. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We know our budgets.
Yep.
We know what our budgets are. We know what our line items are.
We do.
We know what we pay. We know when we pay it.
That's correct.
And we do need to, it's not something that any other school district is not being asked to do. It's not something that any citizen is not being asked to do. It's not something that we're not asked to do in our household. Yeah, we know what our expenses are. And the thing that's so scary is that we have not allowed for any unexpected expenditures, which we know will come. So this is saying that we have to hold it so tightly until we will find ourselves in a deficit the 5th year, and we have to go back and ask for a levy passage in 2027.
The second request I would have in order to, just for clarification for us as administration, in order to project this in the 5-year forecast, those reductions would need to be board approved.
Yes.
Okay.
Everything has to be board approved.
Correct. I mean, before I even put it in and send it to ODE, it's not, whatever I send to ODE has to be board approved.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure we all hear the same thing.
Well, that's what's required. It's that it is a board, all of this is subject to board approval.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Well, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Anything additional?
I would just say I concur with you, Madam Chair. It's disappointing that we have asked the community to dig deeper. It's disappointing in the fact that they have answered the call, and they did not come in here and tell us, I want to keep my cable, I want to keep my lights. They answered, and they answered with 58% of the vote. So we certainly want to thank the public, but we asked them to make a decision for the kids. It's disappointing to hear 1 month that we will get here, and now we're here, and we can only come up with half. So I concur with Member Sykes, with the Chair Sykes, and I'm not sure that it's something that the board wants to do. Right. But we have a responsibility, and the responsibility that's given to us, not just for the children, but to the community as well. I'm going to hold to that. I'm going to hold to that. And just like any of our homes, we know that unforeseen expenses occur. So I think not only do we need to make the cuts, but we need to also be prudent in thinking what potentially may happen and where those things will come from.
And let me just ask you, Mr. Treasurer, one last thing. So looking at our total budget, if we were to show a $10 million reduction throughout each year, what percentage of the budget would that be?
10% is about 2.5%.
2.5%. So that's what we need to find, 2.5%.
Yes, ma'am.
And then if 2.5%, okay.
I have one other. What was the millage on the levy?
8.9 mils.
8.9.
Okay, so
That includes the bond.
can you separate those two for me?
Yes. 7.6 was general operating, 1.3 bond.
So 2.5% of the budget is what we need to cut.
Yes, sir.
And we asked the public to pass a levy, 7.6, which they said yes,
Yes, sir.
and a 1.3 bond issue to build a school, and they said yes.
Yes, sir.
I think that's more than reasonable.
Yeah. If there's nothing else, then thank you, Dr. Thompson. Thank you, Dr. Robertson. And we will move on through the agenda. So the October monthly finance report.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry. So I will make sure this is on our board agenda, obviously, on the 25th, so we can certainly come back to this. And it pretty much confirms what we thought. I'm sorry. Not sure why this is happening.
Yeah, it's not coming up.
Okay, here we go. So again, 7 pages of this financial report. It's showing our variance that we talked about a few weeks ago. That variance stays very similar to what it was previously, a little bit more, but that's oftentimes just timing. I think it's somewhere around $19 million is where we'll hold in that variance from the last forecast to today. And I'll get to the page that really kind of summarizes things. And obviously, you have this document at your leisure. But I want to get, past it. A little bit hard to read on this.
You can just highlight.
Yeah,
Just
but
highlights.
as you can see, the revenue is still trending above what we anticipated. And again, not forecasted, but I still think there's some good news to come in that we know we didn't lose student enrollment this year. We actually gained student enrollment. We get paid by students. So in January, I'll know what that dollar figure is going to look like. But I forecasted, so it was in our budget and in our 5-year forecast, that we would have declining student enrollment at 1% a year. And we actually gained students. So we should see, and that number is not a result of that. That number hasn't arrived yet. So I anticipate that number will increase as we move forward. But you can see that a lot of that is due to real estate taxes and revenue in lieu of taxes is where a lot of that money is coming from right now, our tax dollars. Expenditures are unfavorable at about $25 million. Textbooks, as we've known all along, was going to play a part in that variance. So that certainly has played a role. And expense estimates versus amounts projected in the 5-year forecast, they're just different, and they're different by about 7.1% overall. So, but generally speaking, this is trending about where we anticipated.
Okay, any questions? Thanks, Dr. Thompson. So now we're at board members' event information.
There's always fun, exciting stuff, meetings and all that good stuff for you to attend. And so this has been recently updated and let you know what's coming up. And we're trying to do our very best to make sure you're informed and aware as a board what's coming and when it's coming and all of those things. So please check that out. You should find pretty much anything you need. If there's something that we're missing on it, and you notice, if you could please let my office know, and my administrative assistant will make that correction.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Thompson. Any questions, any comments? Dr. Molinar?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The October forecast.
Yes, ma'am.
And I appreciate all of my colleagues' comments so far during this meeting. And I also think when we discuss the levy, right, the best way to demonstrate your gratitude is to showcase responsibility. And I think that I agree with that sentiment. Our expenditure trend for October said it was 25 million unfavorable. I thought I remembered from the previous that we were 19 million unfavorable.
Almost 20 million, that's
so
correct.
Are we 6 million more unfavorable since the last month?
Remember that we're just in the beginning of this fiscal year. So when things come in, I don't think it's trending like that. I don't see evidence in when we did all our forensic for the 5-year forecast to see that. I think it's a timing issue, but we'll know a little bit more if we see our November numbers, and our Novembers are growing, then we'll have to stop and take a deep dive and figure out something's happening that we're unaware of, and we'll have to dive into that. But I don't see that, and we dove pretty deeply when we did the 5-year forecast.
Dr. Molinar? Okay. Okay, so we'll just look for trending and we'll look and timing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Trending and timing is a
Timing
big,
and
big
trend-
piece
yes,
of it.
it is. It
and
is.
it could be just a difference of a couple of weeks, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Dr. Thompson, I'll ask that you will keep us updated as these numbers are changing. I think one of the difficult things to do is to go from meeting to meeting. And it just, if we could have more information along the way, and I would ask that of the superintendent as well. If we can have information along the way, it makes it a lot easier to digest.
Sure. Yes, sir. And so that is my goal. As soon as I have information put together, like we did today, we met. I realize it's the morning of a meeting. I understand that. But when as soon as I get the data, I put it together. Remember, I don't necessarily get it ahead of time. But I will certainly keep you apprised of what's happening. I'm sure the superintendent will do the same, and we'll try to make sure you stay in the loop. And I'll probably update I'm sure I will update the 5-year forecast with more frequency than is required. As Dr. Robinson mentioned, it's required in November and May, but that doesn't mean we can't update along the way and amend. So I want to make sure that's really where the eye of the prize is on that bottom line on that 5-year forecast. That really tells the story.
Well, I want to be clear for me. The submitting an original forecast in deficit is not acceptable.
I understand.
Okay,
I
so-
believe that. I think we clearly hear that the mission is to come back on the 25th with something that reflects more like version 3 or version 2, the 10 million in cuts, whatever version number that was. That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to leave with the understanding that we're going to update.
No, I understand.
along the
No,
way.
I just mean
Yeah,
just
okay.
updating as we go along,
Yeah.
because as you both mentioned, there are so many variables now, more variables than I ever remember. Federal government, who knows what's going to happen at that level? As that money gets filtered to the states, what's our state going to do with those funds? Are they going to reduce them? Are they going to send them to private schools? How much more is vouchers going to take from us? So there's just so much to project that this is a living, breathing document. It's meant to give us guardrails. It's meant to give us a direction, and it certainly does that. So I'll keep it updated for you all so that you understand it and know what it is. And in May, it'll be a number you know's coming.
And just as important, we want to decide our own destiny.
Sure.
We don't want to send information to the state only for them to come back to say, you shall do this.
Right.
Because they have that authority to do
They
that.
can.
You
Yeah,
shall do
absolutely.
this. Let us start off by saying, we understand, we heard you, and these are the results.
Correct.
And show that we understand it, as well as the public, that we understand. We understood you, we heard you, and we're not going to misunderstand the communication that we had with you. Because you're right, I did stand out there every single day. And I said, we will take care of your dollars. And this does not seem to recognize that we heard them.
Understood.
And I don't take this lightly at all. So, even though we're on board members' event information, we're going back. And I know we're going back because it's just important to us. It's just really more. And we don't have staff. We don't have anyone to help us point these things out. So we have to try to read along, read ahead, keep up with what you all have all the staff. We don't have the staff. And so as we read it and see it and understand it, then that's when we bring it up. That's when we mention it. So if there's not any more questions, and this is committee, we're not going to rush through this. We've got a few more minutes. Anything else, Dr. Molinar? Okay. All right, so board members' event information, thank you for that. Let's move on to, was it new business or unfinished business?
Well, we have unfinished business
Unfinished
first.
business. Was there anything that we discussed last time, Member Harrison, that you want to discuss? One thing I'll bring that under new business. So nothing on unfinished business? Okay, new business. You actually mentioned to me about a meeting that you participated in yesterday and wondered why that item wasn't in finance?
Yes, we were talking, it was in the equity committee about the new build, the new construction for the Kenmore Pfeiffer building. And I understand that that was approved by, at a previous board meeting. The actual build was voted on. But we are talking about $63 million, and then we have $54 million for the build. We're approving contracts, or contracts will be presented to us. And I think that the more appropriate place for that to transpire, to find out how much money we have, how much the bill will be, who we're paying what to, I think that is an appropriate, that finance is an appropriate place for that to be.
Understood.
So was there a question to the superintendent or the treasurer? How did it end up in that committee?
How did it end up in the equity committee and not come through either legal contracts or finance? Well, I think $63 million, it should have at least touched finance.
So I think when the discussion came up, this was from a couple of months ago, when Mr. Keenan was coming to the equity committee meeting to discuss the bill. And he wasn't able to finish then. Then it came back, I think, yesterday to the equity committee. But certainly, I mean, it can come through finance, but that's where it originally came through. And I'm not really sure of what evoked the first meeting. I think it was, I know what it was. Ms. Hall had asked a question about the project at Bookdale. And she asked something else about the new buildings, and that's where it came into that committee meeting.
Is she the chair? Who's the chair?
She's the co-chair
Co-chair.
for,
Okay,
is it? She's a co-chair, I think, for equity.
okay,
That's how it ended up in the equity.
okay.
So my concern would always be, when we're talking about something to that magnitude, when we're talking about $54 million, when we're talking about finances in general, to ensure that we are being diligent in what we're doing, those types of things need to be discussed in the finance meeting.
Oh, sure.
Those things should not go to other committees. Those things should be in the finance meeting. I would ask that that be moved and those things to that magnitude come through the finance committee.
Well, Member Harrison, I think that is something that we can discuss with the members, with the board chair, board president, and the members, how items are getting to committees, how items are being assigned to committees. I think the administration probably was just assigning them per interest of board members. And that's probably how that ended up. That's what I'm hearing Dr. Robinson
When she brought
saying.
it up,
Yeah.
when she brought it up, we brought it to the
Yeah.
to that committee.
Yeah.
But certainly it can come through the finance
Yeah.
committee.
So
'cause
I think
actually both
if
you
we
want.
just have to work to make sure that we have some procedure, some process as board members as to when items, what is going to come before committees. Because before, I think it's just kind of been left up to the administration. Is that what I'm hearing? And just doing the best you could, just take it to wherever the interest may be.
That's what I found.
That's, yeah. So that's something that I think as a board that we need to work on to make sure, and then if we give that directions to the administration, then I think that they would be more than happy to do it. Yeah. Okay, so if there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. So we are adjourning at 5:28 p.m.